Good evening. This is the May 5th, 2025 meeting of the Grafton Planning Board. We'll call the meeting to order, and because a board member is attending remotely, we will take a roll call of the attendees. Justin Wood.
Present.
Bob Hassinger.
I'm here.
Greg Dalamole.
Present.
Prabhu Venkatraman.
Present.
David Robbins is present. Associate Member Ray Mead.
Present.
Staff, Fiona Coughlin.
Present.
And Natalia Allward.
Present.
I don't know. My brain momentarily went blank there.
We flipped on you last.
There's a sign over there.
I was going to say that, Bob, but her name's right there.
I dare.
I get to claim senior moment.
There you go. Yeah, it works.
Alrighty.
I got a lot.
I don't know. Anyway, proceeding into our agenda, the first agenda item is public input. If there's anybody attending the meeting in person or via Zoom that would like to speak to the board on a matter that is not on the agenda for this evening, now would be the time to raise your hand and let your voice be heard. I do not see any raised hands either in the room or on Zoom, so we'll proceed to our action item agenda. The first action item is a lot release request at Abbey Woods. Fiona?
Sure. So this request is to follow up from last week. Let me just pull up the correct screen here. So the applicant and the developer, Mr. Rad, is submitting a request for release of the lots that are in phase one. So that's the first, the remaining three that needed to be released. This was double checked by staff pretty closely. All the correct book and page numbers are referenced. All of the correct language is used. As I kind of continue to mention this over and over again, that there's a covenant in place to cover phase two and those lots that are unreleased until the future comes and a bond is replaced, and then we'll go through this process all over again. But this is just so the developer can build and issue COs for the last three lots in phase one that we're waiting for the bond. And we've made sure internally that all of the correct language that covers the fact that utilities and the roadway infrastructure needs to be suitably complete before the final release of the lots and selling them to future homeowners. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have. I think you're, for the most part, folks are relatively familiar with this document and know that it follows suit after a bond is approved. So yeah, happy to answer anything and go from there.
Any questions, comments from the board? If there are no questions or comments, a motion might be in order.
I move that the board authorize the release of the lots as drafted and have the board sign as suitable by staff.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Just as a reminder, following up on the motion, that at the conclusion of the meeting, we have paperwork that will need to be signed and notarized, and the arrangements for notarizing, including, as has been mentioned prior to the meeting,
Yes.
keeping the video on so our notary public can visually
Confirm.
assure herself that the appropriate people have appropriately signed. So no leaving the room until you've all signed the paperwork. We'll deal with that after the meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger?
Aye.
Mr. Dalamole?
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman?
Aye.
And Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. The next action item is the draft decision on the request for a special permit for a common driveway at 85-87 Fitzpatrick Road. So we have a draft decision available to us for review.
I will just give a quick spiel as I always do. So this application, the board heard and closed the public hearing in one meeting last week. This is, of course, the final decision. I did not have any comments or anything that I needed elaboration on myself. Relatively straightforward from my perspective, and yeah, I'm happy to go through any concerns the board may have or questions as to why things are worded in a certain way, but this is pretty standard. And I think the big thing that was discussed last week, which I'll just remind, during the public hearing, remind the public that the covenant language was included in the conditions, and that is included as a condition prior to the issuance of a final CO. So I did include that.
Can you point me to that condition? Mm-hmm. Because when I looked at the draft decision, I wasn't able to find a condition regarding the covenant. I don't know if my eyes just weren't seeing it or what.
It is.
Oh, I saw the word.
C6. Yes.
Yeah, okay, it is there.
Yep.
That's, yeah, the word covenant was kind of hidden in all the other language. I saw Worcester District Registry of Deeds there, and
Yes.
yeah,
So
my
that's
eyes just
in there.
glazed over at that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to be sure that was covered.
Yes, and I
I
think.
thought for sure that would have been, and for some reason, I wasn't able to spot it.
Yeah, no problem. And I think that was the main point of discussion when the draft prior to the public hearing being closed. So I did want to just make one last point of elaboration that because this wouldn't be peer reviewed, I do have a condition in there that either myself or the building inspector will go out and inspect the construction once it's complete. Just to cover that base, because it needs to be inspected by the board or its agent, the agent being myself or Tracy Sharkey. So
Yep. Any other questions, comments on this draft decision? So it would appear to be, I didn't pick out anything else. It's just, for some reason, I had difficulty finding that part of it. I don't know why. Anyway, maybe I had other things on my mind when I was reading this. I don't know. Anyway, no excuses. With no further discussion, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the decision as drafted, including approving all waivers, all findings as presented, etc., and direct staff to finalize the appropriate documentation.
That was favorable.
Yes. Whether I said it
The
or not,
clear
it was what I
implication
meant.
was favorable findings.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none. Mr. Wood,
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger,
Aye.
Mr. Dalmole,
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman,
Aye.
and Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. Staff will get this pushed out the door as soon as practicable.
yes, should be able to get on that tomorrow, and we'll follow up with the applicant with any questions they may have.
Yep, so on to the next step of that with the appeal period and all the usual stuff, which we don't need to
Yes.
detail here.
Yes.
All right, the next action item is a draft decision on the scenic road permit for George Hill Road. For this, Bob and I will recuse ourselves. I will ask Justin to chair the discussion and the vote for this deliberation.
Wonderful. So, I'd rather say anything to.
I think we can sit here as long as we keep our mouths shut.
And you don't look at anybody or point.
I'll just try with body language to influence the board here.
Okay.
Anything to talk about on this decision, Fiona?
No, I again, another, follow up from last week. I don't have any comments. I think this one was pretty straightforward. I know there was a lot of discussion at the hearing last week about stormwater and paving and things that are really outside of the scope of what this decision would cover anyway. So this was, focused on, just gentle reminder to the public, this is focused on, the resetting of the stone walls and the removal of trees. So, that, there's public comment that's captured in the findings of, other topics that were discussed, but there's no conditions pertaining to that information. one thing that I probably make a point to call out is the hours of the construction activity are going to align with our general bylaws. I think that came up at the last week, and there's a condition about that specifically. Tying this decision to the Conservation Commission's order of conditions. That's included. That's just kind of a boilerplate condition that we include, but it's not always common with scenic roads, but I just wanted to call out that it is in there. Yeah, I think that's really all I had. It's lots of work, but I think that I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any comments, questions, or concerns from anyone on the board?
Not from
Prabu, Greg, Ray? I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we instruct staff to, I move that we accept the draft decision and
Favorable findings.
with favorable findings.
Yeah.
One second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Deloy,
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman,
Aye.
and I vote aye. I declare the motion carried unanimously of participating board members. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Robbins.
And before you do, let me, on behalf of the residents of George Road, let me thank the board for approving this scenic road permit so we can get the work done on our road eventually.
I know that permits often can be kind of molded based on past permits. I don't think we have any past permits, though, that were really good models for what's going on here.
Yeah, the closest I can remember in my years on the board was in 2017, we had a scenic road permit for comparable work on Adams Road.
I don't think it was anywhere near as
It
much.
wasn't as extensive as this.
No.
It was paving, basically.
And there
Some
are
drainage
fewer
work.
stone walls.
Yes. Yes, the scope and magnitude of the work on this one is
I'm not
unprecedented.
I'm not at all sure for certain, but I think the 22 feet that they're talking about was the same as Adams Road.
Yeah, I think.
And
yeah.
you know, all the people that were asking, you could say, look at what happened on Adams Road, and it would have been a little simpler, although, it is the walls and
Anyway,
tougher drainage.
proceeding on with our
Is there
action
any
item
tougher
agenda.
anywhere?
I don't think so.
We have one more action item, which is a fee waiver request for the 77 Worcester Street project that will be the subject of one of our public hearings this evening. We can take it up at this point. I see no compelling reason to defer that until the time of the public hearing. Although, if the board would prefer to deal with the fee waiver request as part of the public hearing, I would not object.
I think we can do it now, and since I've read the materials and support this, but for interest of discussion, I will move that the board grant the fee waiver request as written.
Second.
Okay, moved and second. Any discussion on the motion? If you wanna-
Yes.
Any,
How did we get, who got the wrong, who gave the wrong information and who got the wrong information?
The applicant had approached the ZBA because it was thought to be a non-conforming structure, but actually, based on the timeline that was found out a little bit later, it was not. And at that point, the applicant had paid all the associated fees and had gone before the ZBA. So I had made the recommendation to, in light of the error,
Yeah,
pursue this avenue.
what I read, it
consideration.
just said, we were told the wrong thing, basically, and we paid. Who was responsible for determining what the right thing was? Should have been the zoning officer, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm not sure who exactly said what, But, you know, I think because the sign had been around since at least the 90s, and I think it operating under, you know, that thought, and not realizing the catastrophe, you know, when a car ran into the sign, and because there was, I believe, some hold up with the insurance company that caused the lapse in 2 years, and that's kind of how we got here. And we're just, you know, we want to work with the, you know, work with the applicant, but, you know, yeah, understood that it was, it shouldn't have happened in the first place. So apologies for that.
Any other discussion, questions?
Mr. Chairman. So the applicant paid the fees to the ZBA and then didn't go to the ZBA.
They did go before the ZBA. Yes, they had a hearing, and then they had to withdraw that application.
Because it wasn't a zoning board issue.
Right.
So why weren't those fees refunded?
Well, Natalia, maybe you can. We did have a discussion about refunding the fees. But I had spoken to the building department, and they said that they were unable to do that. So we offered this as a solution.
So-
I think the processing once payment is made, that's what I was told. I don't know all the specifics as to why that can't be processed, but
The payments go to the building department?
the zoning, the ZBA administrator works out of the building department, so that's all I meant by that. So she's processing the payments from that office, and I had inquired and I asked, could you process a refund, and said it couldn't be done. So we're trying to, offer this as a.
I don't like it.
Natalia's hand is up. Natalia?
So normally a refund probably could be done, but they did apply and they did go through the process. So I think that they thought it would not be appropriate to return the funds, but since they had to come before us, that's when we decided that maybe it wasn't fair to charge them twice.
Mr. Chairman. So Natalia, they went through the ZBA process, and there was a decision by the ZBA that said you don't have to be here, or they denied it, or what was that?
That part of it, I think Fiona has a better explanation available for that part. I was just referring to the actual application fees.
Yeah, once the circumstances were explained surrounding the sign, the ZBA recommended withdrawing the application because it was in front of the incorrect board based on the sign bylaw.
So
They
Was that
can't
in a
grant the
hearing?
relief.
Was that in the hearing?
Yes, in
they
the,
must have opened a hearing for it, yeah.
right.
So, I mean, I think Bob, I agree with Bob, is that there's a fee process. There's a fee process that the planning board requires, and there's a fee process that the zoning board of appeals requires. They found out at the zoning board of appeals that they didn't need to be there. So the zoning board of appeals asked them to withdraw. In my opinion, they should go back to the zoning board of appeals and say, can you refund our fee? And Fiona, I understand what you're saying is we don't want to pay this fee and then have to pay that fee because they didn't have to be there, but that being there was not our problem. It really wasn't. It was the zoning board. It's not the zoning board's problem either. They go back to the zoning board, they get their fee back, and then they have to pay this one. It's not a lot of money. But, I mean, the town does not usually waive fees unless it has to do with a state agency, a town agency, or, something like that.
Right.
So, unfortunately, I can't vote, but
I-
I'm not in favor of it.
I would think that the ZBA and staff invested effort, which is what the fees are really supposed to pay for. Now, we've invested effort. And we should get fees to cover it.
Yeah, just,
She spent more energy than she should have had to.
yeah, yeah, at various times over the years, applications to the planning board for special permits, site plan approvals, whatever, yeah, have been filed, fees have been paid, and then the applications have been withdrawn. We don't typically refund fees. Really for almost any reason. We have occasionally waived fees. I think the most recent one I can think of, and I'm not sure it's the most recent one, but the one that pops into my head was that there was, it may have been something like they filed, had to withdraw due to a change in board membership, possibly within the last 2 or 3 years, and then they refiled again. It was sort of withdrawing and refiling essentially the same application, and I think we voted to waive the fee on the refiling under that circumstance. I don't remember a situation like this ever coming before us before, and while sort of in the abstract, I can see you need a permit from the town. You should file once and pay once, except if you filed for the wrong one, it gets kind of awkward, and it's. Like I said, I don't remember a comparable situation before, and
Well, I mean, I think it's appropriate for them to ask for their fees back from the zoning board of appeals when it was determined that they didn't need to be there.
Yeah.
So if they didn't, it's not like they went in and, 5 members of the zoning board said, oh, geez, I don't really like this, and okay, I'm gonna withdraw, without prejudice.
Yes.
They didn't need to be there.
Right. This is kind of a unique situation.
Yeah.
Where you file with the wrong board, and and that wrong board did go through the usual procedures up to a point where it was determined that you're in the wrong board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move the question.
So there is a motion on the floor. Any I don't want to beat this horse too dead.
He's dead enough.
I will simply say that the explanation from you, Mr. Mead, and Mr. Hassinger has changed my mind coming into this meeting. I think I agree with you guys now.
All right, so if there's no further discussion, we'll call for a vote on the motion. Mr. Wood?
Nay.
Mr. Hassinger?
Nay.
Mr. Delamole?
Nay.
Mr. Venkatraman?
Nay.
And before I cast the final vote, Natalia's hand is up. Is there anything we need to know before we complete this action?
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to make mention that they did pay the legal advertising fee. This was just for the application fee, so they paid the part that belongs to the legal advertising.
Thanks. All right. I will cast the final vote on this motion. Nay, making it unanimous. The motion is defeated unanimously. Okie dokie. All right. Let me, for the moment, move past discussion items to take care of one brief item of general business, bills.
I move that the board pay the bills as presented.
I would second the motion to say we authorize the payment.
I will revise my wording to reflect what Mr. Hassinger just said.
All right, moved and seconded that we authorize payment of the bills. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Justin?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
And Dave votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. We've got about 5 minutes before our public hearings. Is that likely to be enough time for Fiona to update us on the Grafton Common Traffic Study?
Yes. So that, I just wanted to, just elaborating, why this is on the agenda. The project is through the end of June. We're talking about this every week to give the public an opportunity to continue to provide feedback. We're trying to use as many avenues in person and electronic, as possible to allow for that. Just an update is, I met with the Stantec team on, the other day to review progress on the project and discuss the next steps. They're currently going through the data that they gleaned from the open house and comments submitted, as well as interactive board packets that were filled out. There were kind of sheets that were distributed at the open house, that were filled out by the public and turned in to mimic the interactive boards that were set up at the actual event. So we just kind of want to continue to tell folks, even if you didn't get the packet in yet, if you do want to fill one out, please do so and send it to me at planningdepartment@grafton-ma.gov, or you can shoot me an email with a comment as well. And we have a project page, so continue to check that out. It's updated regularly. We are posting on, Facebook regularly. We're doing news flashes on the website, which if you're subscribed to those, you will get a text or an email. And happy to kind of walk through how that works with anybody who's interested. But I will be meeting again with Stantec on the 7th and again on the 14th and the 28th. During those meetings, we'll, review findings and recommendations and then do a deeper dive into strategies and finalizing the recommendations further, probably on the 28th. So, this really is just a brief update and encouraging people to continue to submit their commentary and giving people a project update, and any materials that I get from Stantec in my meetings on the 7th, 14th, and 28th, I'll update on the project page, so people can see, what they're coming up with in real time. So happy to answer any questions about that.
Any questions for Fiona on that topic?
And I'll just add one last thing is if you want to be added to the stakeholder email list, just email myself or planning department at grafton-ma.gov. You'll get bi-weekly, sometimes tri-weekly email updates. So that's another way to stay in the know as well.
I'm never a fan of bi-weekly because it has 2 meetings.
Yeah.
All right. So we still have about 3 minutes. Is that enough time for a staff report?
Sure. Not much has happened since last week because I'm spending most of my time writing permits and doing reviews. We have master plan working group on Wednesday at 7. Almost complete. We're going to be reviewing the draft plan, so encouraging folks to stay in attuned to that process and attend that meeting. The agenda's up if anyone's curious and needs the Zoom link. I had a meeting with UPS. They were talking about they're in compliance with their permit with us. They're doing well with Concom. I think there's been some activity with the unions on that site, so they're working through a alternative protesting staging area for them to have so the protesters can do what they need to do without blocking the entries and exit ways at Centennial and Centec. That was kind of the main update from them. I had a meeting with VHB to finalize low impact development edits to the subdivision regs. This has been rolling out over a very long time, but we're almost at the end of this process. It's going to be minimal, no crazy outlandish changes. The board did look at these edits about a year and a half ago, maybe. And we've been kind of continuing to get staff comment ever since, and now we're ready to kind of bring them around for a second round of board comment. So you'll be seeing those soon. Yeah, I'm happy to, I think, at this stage, I can answer any questions about any projects or groups or studies or anything in particular, instead of kind of going through the list. Might be easier that way.
Any questions for Fiona, comments related to the staff report? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda is correspondence. Was there anything in correspondence that caught anybody's eye? It being only a week or so since our last review of correspondence, so not a lot has come in. Anything you wanted to call our attention to, Fiona?
The big thing, I guess, is the Central Mass Brownfields Roundtable on June 3rd. Could be a good opportunity for people who are interested. Obviously, being in the Blackstone Valley, we have lots of mills and lots of brownfields that could use attention. So, this is a great opportunity to provide feedback, and this is in conjunction with CMRPC, who I think is kind of co-hosting these roundtables, and there'll be more as over time. So, but I think this is one of their first at District 3 office. So, yeah.
I bet your 5 would fit right in here.
Mr. Chair, if I may just briefly talk about my committee meeting outside of the timing for that? Briefly?
Reports from planning board representatives and town committees and CMRPC.
Yep. I just wanted to replug a spring 2025 business meeting for Grafton businesses hosted by the Economic Development Commission. That will be hosted on May 15th at Reunion Tap and Table. I do have a flyer here if there is a business owner that would like to grab one before they walk out of the room. Just wanted to call it out, but that's certainly something that we're looking forward to some attendance at.
Anything else? Hearing none, we can move into our public hearings. Our first public hearing is a request for special permit site plan approval at 74 Main Street.
Okay, pursuant to sections 1.5.7 and 1.3.3 of the Town of Grafton zoning bylaws, the planning board will hold a public hearing on Monday, May 5th, 2025, commencing at 7:30 p.m. in the conference room A of Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, to consider an application for a special permit and site plan approval request for a private practice establishment providing counseling and medical management on property located at 74 North Main Street, as shown as Grafton Assessor's Map 19, Lot 47. Said property is located in Neighborhood Business NB zoning district, and the applicant is Lightmind Psychiatry LLC, Susan Gagan, APRN, and the owner is Breakout LLC. A copy of the application plan is available for public inspection at the planning department during regular business hours on the Town of Grafton website at www.grafton-ma.gov on the Planning Department Development Projects webpage.
Okay, thank you. Fiona, can you give us a brief introduction of the project?
Yep, absolutely. So, elaborating a bit more on what Greg has just listed. So the applicant is requesting to open her private practice, like Lightmind Psychiatry, in an existing building at 74 North Main Street. The building and the site will remain untouched by this application. This is strictly for the use of the practice there. The site is, and I realize that I might have made a bit of a mistake in my memo. The site, I said it was formerly the location of Truth Spa. Actually, Truth Spa is still continuing to operate out of this location until this early summer, at which point the applicant will start setting up her business. So there won't be any overlap, but I just wanted to clarify that because I think I might have, I should have elaborated a bit better in my memo. So, yep, again, it's a pre-existing non-conforming structure on a roughly 20,000 square foot lot, 112 feet of frontage. I did have a couple of questions, but as we kind of go through, but all in all, we're happy to, I'm happy to discuss any questions that the board may have about my memo specifically, but it was relatively straightforward for me. So.
You are
I'm Susan Gagnon. Nice to meet you. Good evening. So I'm relocating to the Worcester County area, and I have been providing mental health care and medication management to patients for many years. So I saw this opportunity for a literally perfect building for me to just literally walk into and not have to do anything to it, essentially.
Yeah, this strikes me as one of the simplest sorts of permit approvals that we have to deal with, but no changes whatsoever, no construction whatsoever is involved. It's just when Truth moves out, you move in.
Basically, yes, that's it. Maybe I paint a little bit inside and get some furniture, but it's
Change
ready.
the sign.
Yeah, you'll probably be changing the sign out there.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
When I first read the application package, I thought I read a property management company, and but I might have been misremembering in my read, and then I was like, that was a prior use.
Oh,
And
okay.
Then when I remembered that it was Truth Spa, I'm like, oh well, that is probably almost exactly the pattern you're going to be getting.
Probably even a little less.
Yep.
Because we see one or two people at a time. So it's pretty quiet, low key type of business. And, my goal is maybe to get another nurse practitioner as well and a therapist, so that we're able to provide some brick and mortar services. As everybody knows, during COVID, we became very accustomed to telehealth, and while that's beneficial, people still need to see people in person.
Yeah, but particularly in your field, I suspect that
Absolutely, yeah,
personal contact tends to work better.
of course, for sure.
Are you a doctor or?
I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner. So I have independent practice authority in Rhode Island and in Massachusetts, for diagnosing, prescribing, providing psychotherapy services.
Nurse practitioners, I know them more up at UMass at ordinary stuff, but they seem to be getting to do a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. In the majority of states now, you have independent practice, so, which is good because it increases access to services. It didn't seem that you had many providers here in this town. I think I found one psychiatrist and maybe one other nurse practitioner that was telehealth only. So it seemed like a good opportunity. We have people doing telehealth from all over the country, but they don't see them in person. So, it's necessary for health assessment reasons too, just to make sure things are okay.
Inside, what's on the second level now?
So, when you enter the building and into the office areas, there is a stairwell that goes up, and there's that's open, and it has two other additional offices on the top, and then like a small kitchenette. So those can be therapy offices.
Okay, because going back before Truth, when the dentist, I think it was when the dentist was there, that there was a discovery that there was someone living up there, and we had quite a little go around about, no, you can't do that in that zone. Just
I did know that already, yes.
okay.
Yes, that was one of the first questions. I think there was maybe a stove in there that they took out. So one of my things is I need to replace the countertop and just make that a place where people who are working there can prepare their lunch. And
I'm happy we can.
Any other questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public? We don't have any attendees on Zoom. We have two other people in the room. Do you have any questions about this? Somehow I suspect you may be here for the other public hearing. So if there are no questions from the public, no question from the board, Bob?
I move that we close the public hearing and direct staff to prepare a draft decision.
Mr. Chair, staff does have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm, so just so I'm clear, you're the, Truth is in there until June, and then you're going in, and you are not sharing the building with any other, it's just you, and you're expecting 1 to 2 clients a day, you said?
at a time.
At a time.
I
At
would
a
say,
time,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
And then if we have another nurse practitioner and a therapist join us, they would have clients intermittently. Therapists tend to see their clients for an hour at a time
Okay,
generally, and my visits are probably 20 to 30 minutes
I just
for
wanted
medication.
to confirm, just because make sure the parking is suitable for the traffic that you're going to ultimately see, which seems fine. And then that's the staff members, they'll be full-time?
Well, hopefully.
Okay,
I'll take some part-time too, whatever we can get.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just sort of intuitively, I would think that the kind of track, even with you and a couple of additional,
Providers, yeah.
providers there, it's not quite the same thing as what Truth's business. Truth, I suspect, has probably some more traffic than you would likely have.
I think so, because they'd be doing all kinds of esthetician services and massages and things all at the same time. Yeah. So,
So I heard a motion.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded that the public hearing be closed and staff be directed to draft a decision. Any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, Justin,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Prabu,
Aye.
and Dave votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. Fiona will get to work on the paperwork. The board will review and approve the decision in 2 weeks,
Okay,
assuming that
Well-
nothing interferes with getting a decision ready for us, a draft decision in 2 weeks.
We'll vote on the decision in 2 weeks.
We will review and vote on the decision.
okay, and then the next steps are, is it a appeals period or something that
Yes.
takes
Yep.
place?
Yep, so then it'll be once, if and when the board approves, then it'll be filed with the town clerk and it'll go through a, 20-day appeal period, 21.
20 days.
20, thank you. 20 days, and then, stamped, and then you'll just need to get that recorded at the registry of deeds, and you're good.
Okay,
Yep,
very good.
alrighty.
Welcome to town.
Thank you. I
welcome.
appreciate it.
Happy to see a mental health services provider added to our
Of course.
inventory of town providers.
That's great.
Mental health services are always in short supply. And
Absolutely.
It's a challenge.
Absolutely. Yep. Happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Alrighty, so moving on to our second and final public hearing of the evening.
All right, the Grafton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, May 5th, commencing at 7:30 PM in the Conference Room A of Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, to consider an application pursuant to section 4.4.4 of the Grafton zoning bylaw for a special permit for sign relief related to the replacement of a non-conforming sign that was destroyed to be located at 77 Worcester Street, shown on the Grafton Assessor's Map 55, Lot 2. Said property is located in the Community Business CB zoning district. The applicant is Amy Murray. The owner is 77 Worcester Street Realty Trust, Patel, Kalish, and Rakesh, and Kanina Yalal, the trustees. A copy of the application plan is available for public inspection at the planning department during regular business hours or on the Town of Grafton website at www.grafton-ma.gov on the Planning Department Development Projects webpage.
Alright, so
Sure.
kick us off, Fiona?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the applicant is proposing to construct a freestanding business sign to replace a sign that, in the same location that was knocked down by a car. The sign, even though I do want to get clarification from the applicant whether it's proposed to be 10 feet tall or 11, because I saw in one schematic it was 11 and one was 10. So, and then 6 feet wide at 77 Worcester Street. The sign, so just circle back to the non-conforming situation. So the sign was pre-existing non-conforming. It was hit by a car, which constitutes, a catastrophe per the zoning bylaw. It needed to be rebuilt or repaired completely within 24 months, which that would protect its non-conforming status. The applicant wasn't able to achieve that timeline for certain reasons, and because of that, now it's in front of the planning board for a to reconstruct and also seek relief from having the sign closer than 12 linear feet from the front and side lot line, and to locate the actual sign, the sign area, between 2.5 and 7 feet from average grade. So those are the two things that the sign is seeking relief from the board for under section 4.4.4.4 of the zoning bylaw. The sign area is 30 square feet. The maximum allowable area under the bylaw is 37 square feet. So they are all set in that regard. This is in a commercial business commercial business district, and in the water supply protection overlay district. But obviously, the impact to the water supply protection overlay district will be minimal. The structure is on a almost 17,000 square foot lot and has 151 feet of frontage on Worcester Street. The sign that's being proposed now is actually rectifying an issue with the footing was protruding into the, state highway layout. And through this application, they're removing that from the case. So, happy to, answer any questions the board may have for me as staff before turning it over to the applicant, but that's kind of my brief summary of where they're at.
Okay, questions from the board?
I have questions, but I think I'll let them go and then I'll ask and we can see where to go from there.
Hi, Amy Murray with AG Signs. And yes, I'm working with Grafton Liquors on a new sign to replace their sign that was hit by a delivery driver, I believe. I just want to correct that. The sign is actually 24 square feet, but it is 10 feet high to the top of the sign. And we will be using the existing footing. And yes, we are requesting that it be in the same location as the other sign that was taken down, which would be considered non-conforming at this time based on the current bylaws. And for the reason why it wasn't within the 24 months, I'll turn it over to Mike here.
Yeah, my name is Maulik Patel. I'm the manager of the liquor store, Grafton Liquors. And the reason was because we were waiting for a insurance money to get that and then work on the signage. That took me 1.5 years to get that money. So that was the reason that I couldn't apply before 24 months.
Insurance companies.
Yeah, that's why it was pain. I was every month I was keep calling them hey, what happened? They're just oh, we are in process. And that was the reason couldn't get that in 24 months.
So if you're reusing the existing footings, that means that, I think I understood Fiona to say that one of the footings is actually located in the state highway right away.
Yeah, then the notes on the plan said that was being removed, so I'm glad that was clarified.
For some reason, I didn't look at all the application materials prior to the meeting. I usually do, but
I did, and I ended up fairly confused. I've got parking places in the right of way. I've got a sign that's built in the right of way. I've got pictures that don't. There's in the first here in the Exhibit 1, there's a picture from Signs and Graphics that shows a sign that's much smaller than the one we're talking about. And I'm confused about the placement.
Can I speak? Okay. So the placement, if you're looking at the site map or the certified land survey that we had done, the placement, the footing does extend based off of the certified site plan that we had 2 feet past the property line, the existing, because it's 7 feet.
What's 7 feet?
The footing, it's 2.5 feet wide by 7 feet long, so it does extend 2 feet past the property line, but the sign would actually be within the property line. If you're looking at the site map, that little circle there that's drawn, because what was there previously had 2 posts, and this is going to be a single post, so that is exactly where that post will be going.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Mead.
So what you're saying is that the footing that extends into the state cut is not gonna be supporting the sign? Portion, I'm
That
sorry, I should have
portion of
said
it.
it, that portion of
That
it's not gonna
portion
be
of it,
supporting the sign?
correct.
Okay. And the sign itself, I see that little circle there, but the sign itself is gonna go all the way to the property line?
No, it actually won't. It will be, I think, 2 feet from the property line facing on Worcester Street side and then 6 feet from the side property line.
I'm also a little puzzled about how we can grant.
It was a variance.
It's a variance. You know who gives variances?
Not us.
Not again.
Well, we'll give you fees back. No, but see that, but, you know, Bob is right. I mean, I know it was an existing footing and everything like that, but you can't put a sign that close to the property line and without having a variance to say that, you know, that you can. And like Bob said, we don't grant variances here, so.
Well, I know a special permit is recorded, but wouldn't a variance mean that if they moved out, that somebody else could erect a new sign there without coming before the board because it's a variance? It was a variance approved. I thought a special permit wouldn't allow that to happen if, for whatever reason, Grafton Liquors moved out. Whoever moved in would then have to get their own special permit for a sign in that location. But if it's a variance, it's written into the record with the Registry of Deeds.
Correct. And if you got a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals, which you've already been before, to locate that sign right there, then that's recorded on your deed.
Right,
So when you sell your piece of property, that goes along with the piece
Right.
of property.
right.
So,
Which I would assume would be harder to get,
yeah,
but
I would think that you know, as Bob said, this lot goes back, I can't even remember. I renovated it and put the addition on that, the second floor addition on that building, back in 1988. And, you know, the parking was always within the state cut and the sign was always there and, but, I mean, I don't know. Fiona, what, you know, like, I don't, we can't do this, right?
We can under our
can.
sign by, yeah, it's a very odd and very odd sign bylaw. But yes, and because I spoke to Tracy as well, and I was like, just completely confirming that what I'm reading under section 4444 of the sign bylaw allows the board to grant relief, setback relief, height relief.
Well,
It does.
there you go.
Yeah, it's strange,
We
but it's
spend
I just wasted 5 minutes. of
that's
time.
okay.
Well, no, I think it's helpful to understand, you know, the different jurisdictions and alternatives that could apply and understand what was. But we some years ago, we spent quite a bit of time revising the sign section of the zoning bylaw. I'm told, although I wasn't around when all this happened, that once upon a time, signs were basically a zoning, were in the zoning bylaw in such a way as to be under the jurisdiction of the ZBA.
Yes.
And
Well,
it
they
was,
were anyway.
it was, it was changed to be a special permit matter to provide more flexibility. And yes, the board under section 4444, however many fours there are,
Yes, quite a few.
can grant relief from things like the height limitations, the setbacks from the property lines. And it's basically, as I recall, and I should have perhaps refreshed my memory on that section of the zoning bylaws, exactly why, under what conditions we are permitted to grant relief. It's not sort of open-ended,
So we can do it.
But-
yeah,
By the way, you're not the only one with that situation on Worcester Street.
I mean, ideally,
The other ones just haven't had to come before the,
right.
before the board.
They know better.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Wood.
my different angle question on this is we're looking at a 24 square foot sign that is within the allowance. What I'm not clear on, maybe if you want to know this off the top of her head, is the section that says 77 Worcester Street on this, one on the screen right now, the vinyl cutting. Does that count as part of the sign? Because that's probably another at least 10 feet square foot if you count the whole vinyl cutting.
Mr. Chair, can I answer that? So, based on the definition of sign area, the structural support does not contribute to that. So it's not factored into the,
Yeah,
it's not
the
factored into.
question that
the
made me not sure is the fact that there is lettering on it to designate the site, which is, address marker in a way, so I don't know if that counted, but that's why I figured I'd call it out and
That-
ask.
This illustration makes the support satisfy our definition of a sign. There's information on it. And not just like a street number like that. Well, I think it's gonna take me a little more reviewing of exactly when and where. This just feels wrong to be allowing a sign there like that, and I don't have enough information. If I was on the ZBA or here, we get more information, more accurate and detailed plans of where the sign is versus all the things, what its site triangle is. And this is a bad place. Site triangle is important there. So, I'm not comfortable with the information I've got. And, this sign is multicolored,
It's an electronic message center sign.
so you're saying it can change?
It can.
Well, have you read that part of the bylaw?
I believe it's allowed.
2 colors, background and 1 foreground.
Okay. Regarding an
In spite
electronic.
of what some people are doing with their signs now,
Okay.
you wouldn't be allowed to have that, what you got in the picture. We went through quite a lot about that too. To get any changeable electric sign.
Mr. Chair, do we have information about the accident where the car hit the sign?
I did
What
ple-
happened?
I did provide a police report, but I wasn't there, so I'm not sure if you were there.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah. What's the question?
What happened
happened?
with the accident?
Oh, what happened? Like they were backing up. It was the next door delivery guys. It was not even my delivery guys. It was next door from Stephanie coffee shop, and they were just backing up, and they just hit the sign,
Okay.
and then both legs were just hidden by their.
Yeah. And I guess because back to Bob's point about the line of sight and things like that, I mean, yes, it's not conforming, but now that it's been in an accident, I guess that's my question. Is it safe to put the sign back where it was if it's kind of hanging over onto the road and, people are hitting it? So,
Well, it won't be hanging over into the road.
all right, excuse that. Maybe that's the wrong language, but it's in a place where it normally would be, is my understanding, right? So,
I mean, this sign is definitely lower profile than what was there. I believe that what was there, and obviously I couldn't measure it because it's no longer there. But working our magic in the digital creative age, I estimate that previous sign was about 14 feet high and had multiple sign faces. And the 2 poles at the bottom, I believe that the lowest cabinet on that sign, or the lowest sign face on that sign, would have blocked traffic more than this pole cover would for this new sign.
yeah, I mean, I can't tell from the information we have, but that's my question is like, yes, there's things that are, that were allowed once that aren't allowed now. I guess that's, we need more information of like, what is the actual safety conditions of putting the sign back where it was?
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice, I think, was it you that added?
Yes.
This is a picture from Google
Right.
from before. So that's, I guess, I don't know what the date on it is, but it's more or less what we're talking about.
Google claims it's August 2023, but that, from my understanding, is wrong given the date of the accident. So
Fiona, can you bring
Oh,
up the
probably.
site plan again? Just showing that. So that road layout, see that the line that's closest to 1929 alteration, that's the edge of the pavement on Worcester Street. So this sign is 20 feet back from that. So the issue that you run into is that's a state layout. And at any time, the state could say, we're gonna put sidewalks in, or we're gonna widen the road, and then that sign and a bunch of signs on Worcester Street are gonna find out where they're actually located.
If only
But-
they would widen.
Yeah. So as far as Greg is line of sight, the sign is actually way back. From when you pull up to Worcester Street, the sign is gonna be way back there.
Okay.
It's not even close to being in the way.
Yeah, so at least at the present time, that sign is far enough back that it's not likely to be an issue for drivers exiting from the parking lot onto the street. Operative term there is at the present time.
At the present
The state is not likely to extend the edge of traveled way all the way to the right of way. There's typically,
Right.
but it could widen the road. The state could widen the road as well as putting in bike lanes or sidewalks.
Sure.
So it's
That would
not,
be really nice down there too, but that,
Eh.
that's never gonna happen.
the prospect of that happening is
Yeah.
perhaps not a question we can answer today.
Right. Yeah,
I don't see site triangles. Although, well, I'm not sure whether I see, in this plan, is where the sign is shown, where it's gonna be. With part of it hanging over into beyond the edge of the state right away.
Just the foundation. The existing just the existing footing.
Except now yeah, okay. But that's where it is.
what if they moved it back into that parking spot?
Then it will be way inside to see to the sea from on the road. It will be way back inside there.
True.
Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So I'm seeing on the application package that there's a wireless connection, so that allows for you to change the imagery. Okay. So the color, can you just maybe like elaborate on that for the board? So because our vice chair mentioned the one background color and one color on top of that. So I just kind of want to discuss kind of how we can deal
To
with
be
that.
honest, I can't answer that for you because I'm not manufacturing this sign. My company was just hired for permitting and installation.
Okay.
So that would be a question I would have to go back to the actual sign manufacturer on.
Well, it's how it's used. I think a lot of the signs along the road probably have more capability. It's a question of how it's used.
Right.
You'll see sometimes signs that comply a lot of the time, sometimes don't. Down the road, not far.
But I mean, I'm sure that it can be customized to whatever the restrictions
No,
are.
it's a question of complying with it.
Right.
Whoever controls what goes up on the sign has to,
Yep.
and I'm sure that it will be reiterated in the decision.
Yes,
How
it-
would this electronic sign be powered? Is it like a direct power line that's going to be conduit under your parking lot?
Under
or-
the parking lot, yes.
Yeah, there's existing electrical there because they had an illuminated cabinet with the previous sign. So there was illumination there.
So the power is already there. No new wiring is necessary or proposed with this. Just
Not that I believe, no.
reusing
Correct.
a portion of the existing footing, any existing wiring. And yes, and that's one reason why it's worth noting that any control of the display area of the sign is wireless. So no new networking, no new hardwired networking is involved.
Correct.
And yes, what is displayed on the sign is entirely under your control, and the bylaw does have, there are parameters in the bylaw regarding colors, as Bob said, limited to two colors, although many of the signs that exist in town are capable of much more. There's also limitations on how frequently the display can change. We don't want videos displayed on these. We don't allow videos
Yeah, not the
displayed.
video. Yeah. No.
We had, as Bob noted, we had some of these discussions years ago.
Yeah. So what basically right now it's just like a wine bottle, and then just the pricing. So that will be the only thing that will be with the coloring. That's all.
Yeah, it's background and one color, not two colors and background. People get confused about that.
No. Okay.
Yep.
I'm looking at Google Map from the other side, from
Yeah.
coming towards the center, and it shows the old sign with a tree blocking it.
Blocking it. Yes.
Now, is that tree still there?
It is still there, and I mean, I talked to the next door that if they can trim it on the on the inside, so they will once we get the sign, we'll work on it,
Yeah,
because that was the one other thing too, that from coming the other side, it was blocking.
the thing is that looking at this picture, I would think the sign would be more visible if you
Yeah.
did move it back. Tree or no tree, because there's too much going on. You've got the 122 and 140 sign and all of that. I would think life would be a lot simpler. if it was
Yeah, I
pulled-
think that
pulled
if
back
you
a
move
bit.
it back though, you would be sort of in line with the building. So I think coming from the other direction, it might be blocked.
In line with what building?
The well, you can't really see it in this picture, but the building itself, like if you took that parking spot right next to where the sign is right now, I think it would be parallel in line with the building.
Almost. I will say having the sign also, what seems to be based on my skim from the Google Maps from the previous sign and this, having it lower, it might also be blocked by that mailbox. That's right there.
Oh, the
in that corner.
mailbox, right.
Mailbox.
There's a mailbox out by the road.
Yeah,
There's
that
a
would be
mailbox out by the road.
Oh,
It looks like a
Well,
mailbox for the,
look
Behind the
next
look
132
here.
sign.
yeah.
This is somehow blocking a sign here
Yeah.
or over here.
Yeah, I think it's one disadvantage of
Oh,
having these screens here is, Bob and I can be looking at something on the screen that no one else sees it.
Maybe
I think,
maybe Fiona could find Google Maps 77 Worcester Street, and then we could try to push her around to get to the views we're looking at.
yeah, it sort of strikes me that it is probably worth considering locating the sign farther back from the street, considering possible locations there. Yeah, that's close to or that's what Bob was pointing at. From a slightly, right, what we can see in the
Back
screen
up
there.
a bit.
Right. Yeah,
Good. Now look. And zoom in a bit.
You're not gonna see it from there, no
yeah,
matter where you put it.
yeah.
Right. But if they move it away from the road, it gets more visible,
Yeah, actually
Well-
it does, yeah.
right?
Almost, depending if people are parked there or not on their other lot. That's not this applicant's is the parking spots would block it if people were parked there.
But it depends on how high it is.
Yeah, I was starting to say, and I'm trying to fumbling for the right words, but consider the alternative of, as Bob is suggesting, locating the sign somewhat farther away from the road, looking at it, and look at it. You would want to look at it from both sides. Consider possibly an adjustment in height. To just look at.
Can you zoom in, on right there? Keep going, more. Whoa. The business part of the sign, the actual sign is above that car. The white, whatever it is, probably isn't even legal, I don't know.
That was just the banner.
Just a banner.
That was just the banner.
Right.
Yeah.
So, as it's shown in this picture, can you, well, maybe you can see the picture. The actual working sign is basically above the parked cars.
Just to continue to call out that white car you see on the right side of that zoom in right there. There's two blank spots between that and the edge of the Grafton Liquors spot, as well. So as you get the car closer, it could take up more of that visual space and block things out. And that's a relatively low profile car compared to some trucks I've seen around town.
Mr. Chair, it seems like we're getting into optimizing the visibility of the sign. I'm just more concerned with, like, does it meet the requirements? Is it safe? I mean, if they want to do that.
I don't think so.
I think part of the discussion where the discussion is kind of in terms of visibility of the sign, but it's motivated by the notion of the sign more nearly meeting the requirements of the bylaw in terms of dimensions and setbacks. And in particular, if the sign can be placed within the setbacks allowed by the law, the bylaw, then relief from the setback is no longer necessary. And so there is that, and so it gets into, at least in my mind, it gets into questions about visibility of the sign. Is there a compelling reason to keep the sign in this location so that it is visible to motorists on the road? If there's a sufficiently compelling reason to keep it in this location, I would be more inclined to grant relief, but I don't know that. I have this sort of sense, and I think Bob is kind of getting to it, the sense that maybe if the sign were pushed back farther from the road, if the sign were located within the normally allowable setbacks, it might actually turn out to be more visible. So it might turn out to be, I mean, the whole point of a sign is so people know the bit that you're there. People are looking for Grafton Liquors. It helps to see a sign that says so. And if a better location for the sign is more visible,
There is another sign in that picture that says Grafton Liquors on the building.
And a secondary purpose of the sign, the old sign with the changeable letters on it and the new sign with an electronic version where you can change the message on the sign, that's an additional point of advertising, which is in addition to simply knowing that the business is there, advertising a product. So there's that value to the sign. But again, it goes back to my question. I think, is there a compelling reason that the sign needs to be kept on the existing foundation?
Remind me how the height changes as they move back.
So it's 2 feet of allowance. I'm sorry. Yeah, so so currently they can have the sign up to 11 feet high because they're set back from the front lot line by 2 feet.
Yeah, but as
the
I
more
move the sign back,
it's a foot
how much-
higher every 2 feet to the back.
it's higher and higher. You could, if you go back a few feet, you can get it up high, if higher is better. You can get it higher. And how does the size of the sign fit with, so many square feet, you can have a sign so big, or?
it's based on frontage, so
Yeah.
basically, you know,
Well,
every,
What is their limit? Given, it's based on the building, right?
yeah, I believe they can have up to 60, I think.
60 square feet.
Yeah, I believe so. It's been a minute.
Can
since
I
looked
can
at
I just
this.
make a point? Because I just want to get back to why we're actually here, which is that his sign was hit and taken down.
Not a,
And I understand that, but prior to that, there were no accidents. There were no, the sign has been there for how many years? Over 20? So we're literally just asking to have the sign in the same location.
You-
So,
you know how I feel. You've heard from Dave.
Mr. Chair. One other thought I'm having that we haven't discussed is if we're thinking about an option of saying we're not okay with this unless it's moved into a parking spot, that kind of thing. What, again, I don't know this answer, but what does the current business's use and allowable use allow for parking spaces? For example, are they at their limit and we'd have an issue if we took a space away? Like, is there a
Do they have enough parking? Is that what you're saying?
Per our bylaws?
Including the two that are in the state right of way.
Yes. For their entire layout as it exists for parking. Because I know my reason for thinking about that is I know that several times I drive by and it seems like people are hunting for parking spots sometimes and waiting for people to pull out before they can pull in. So knowing what their actual requirements are on parking, and if we jeopardize that and make it further non-conforming by removing a parking spot, that could be an issue.
Actually, it looks to me like, well, I don't know. Is that a parking space right up against the sign? It's not, you've got the slanted, parking
right next to the sign, there's also a light pole there
where?
between the sign and that first parking spot.
Not sure what you're saying.
A light telephone pole out by the road.
Can you zoom
Oh,
in?
there's a light, there's a parking lot light. there.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
parking
it's like a
lot
parking
light.
lot light.
I'm not seeing.
No.
It was there.
It's
hidden
actually
by the
it's actually on the
I
sign.
see.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's on the sign.
Oh,
up
it was
there.
on
Yeah,
the
it's
sign.
on the, yeah,
Okay.
it's on the sign. Yeah.
All right, my bad.
Well,
Now that's gone.
that doesn't have to be on the sign.
Yeah, no, if the sign is gone, that attachment to the sign is also.
Right.
It's gone. Yeah.
So I'm generally not in favor of making things more complicated than they need to be. I mean, it seems like it seems like it ought to be simple as you expressed it. Well, we had a sign, it's gone through no fault of our own. Can't we just replace it with something that's more or less equivalent? And because that existing sign, the placement did not fully conform to the current sign bylaw, and we lost the 24-month
Rebuild period.
non-conforming, and again, through no fault of your own, but, nevertheless, it's now in the territory where arguably it needs to conform to the current sign bylaw, subject to any relief that the board is willing to grant.
Right, we've established that.
Yeah.
The question is, as you said, compelling reason.
Yes.
And I don't feel I've got a compelling reason at this point. I think the alternatives are probably favorable to, they're no worse, and they're probably better, as long as, they get closer to or even fully in compliance.
Mr. Chair, so after listening to all of this, if, that doesn't even meet the side yard setback. So it doesn't meet the street line setback, it doesn't meet the side yard setback. And if they were to try to conform this sign in, on this piece of property, be in the backyard somewhere, I'm being facetious, Bob. I think this is a situation where, this building's been here for forever, and I do mean forever. These signs have been there forever. There's really no good place to put it. It really isn't. If you look at that, there's really no good place to put it. I think that if they're willing to put this sign in that exact same spot, and you can't see it from driving south, I'm not sure where else you can put it, okay? So it doesn't meet setbacks on two zones. So I say we let them put the sign there, and
And
Did that allow side yards as well as frontage?
Yeah.
4444?
Yeah, it's relief from
I'm
It says-
assuming
Yes,
it's
it's
relief
relief.
everything,
12
yeah.
linear
Well-
feet from front and side lot lines. That's
right,
the relief that's being asked for.
4444 allows relief from the requirements of section 44 with respect to the size, height, installation of signs pursuant to 44259, minimum setback and location on or off premises or quantity of signs. Here, it's
The setback.
setbacks.
As well as 44259, which is the site triangle issue that Bob's talking
Oh,
about.
yes.
Because the placement of the sign is within 2.5 feet and 7 feet. So you need to have the sign at like the 8 foot higher to get, you're asking for relief from that now, but if you had it at the, 8 foot mark, wherever that is on here, you wouldn't,
Yes.
you would be in compliance with that, but that's another thing that the board can evaluate for and
And-
consider.
On that particular point, Bob has observed that on the plans, we do not see that intersection site triangle. So we don't know, we can't tell by reading the plans whether this sign is within that intersection site triangle. And it's the intersection site triangle as defined by ASHTO, which is relative, I don't remember off the top of my head whether it's relative to the edge of pavement or the edge of right-of-way.
Let me see if I can.
The building doesn't even meet the setback. So, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, there's a,
Which came first, the state layout or the
the
building?
layout's been there
We-
long
yeah,
before
we-
the building, I think.
this would not be the first time a structure has been found to be within the state right-of-way.
I think there might be one not far from this.
Yeah, it's building down.
Next door, right?
So, I mean.
And I'll bet you if we look at their parking,
Yeah,
We can't ask that everything be rearranged so everything's neatly within the right-of-way.
well, and I think
everything
that's what
else.
I'm trying to say, is that the building doesn't conform to the current, or, to the setback, and the sign, the old sign, if it was still there, that didn't conform to the setback. And, they wanna put it back in the same spot. Now that I've found out that we have the ability to do this, then I just think that,
Yeah.
I'll say it's hard for me to think of any of the suggested better in compliance methods that are actually better in general to me. I think other than the state may do more takings, or it goes.
it's the chance you
no,
take.
utilization of their right of way. They're not gonna, there's enough land there for,
Yeah,
we need one
Taking
more
is a lot
lane headed towards the common so that you can go by at the light, but,
Yeah,
what was? Oh, I think, I think about the future and I think about this section of road. Like I was saying, we need and there's been studies and so on. I think we have a responsibility to try to make it as good as we can going forward. We can't solve everything, but we can make things better if we do, like, get the sign back where we're talking about, where it'll be more visible. It can be higher, bigger, more around the tree, trees not in the way. But I'm done.
Mr. Chair.
I think all things considered, particularly given that that the old sign was set reasonably far back from the actual edge of pavement, given that the new sign is proposed to be in the same location and no larger than the old sign, I would not be opposed to granting relief in this case, I think. Although in an ideal world, I would suggest that you might be interested in looking at opportunities for a placement of the sign that would be both more nearly in conformance with the zoning bylaw and possibly better for your business. If you wanted to contemplate something like that, I wouldn't tell you not to do that. But yeah, I think if the replacement sign were to be larger or more out of compliance with the bylaw than the old sign was, I would look at it differently. But
I thought this was bigger.
It's not, it's not bigger.
Since we don't have the old sign.
Mr. Chair.
Fiona.
And I also just, if I'm understanding correctly, placement is limited because the conduit that's serving the sign is, I'm sure there may be some, I'll have the applicant explain if there's some flexibility there, but I think that, just making the point that they might be somewhat limited in that regard where the wiring is and, how to hook up.
The wiring can be.
There, yeah, I mean, there is that. There is the, having to dig and pour a new foundation and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, I think probably on general principles, I'm not opposed to replacing a non-conforming sign with a sign that is no more non-conforming, which is kind of the general rule for the ZBA dealing with non-conformance. We have, as we've noted before, the board here has more flexibility than the ZBA does. We are explicitly allowed to grant relief from a variety of parameters here. But I think I'm trying to remember how we've, to the extent to which we've seen somewhat similar situations before, and I think we have dealt with some other cases of someone wanting to put a new sign up where they had an old non-conforming sign. At least one that I can think of, they ended up putting the new sign up in a way that was less non-conforming.
Oh.
But as long as it's no more non-conforming and there are no glaring problems here, and if there were glaring problems, they would have existed with the old sign. So I don't know. I would like to see things improved and become more conformant and more compliant with the bylaw in general. But I think I'm probably making this more complicated in my own mind than it needs to be. But I don't know, whatever. It's.
Do we need a 4 out of 5 on this?
Yes.
This is a special permit, 4 out of 5.
Well, but the process for granting, the non-conforming grants are part of the decision of the actual permit, not findings under 1.1.5 kind of thing. Because there's always the question, is that 4 or 5? Is that 3 or 4?
Yes, and I don't know that we.
We don't know. And we're not going to, no,
No.
no.
No, the vote to grant the special permit needs to be affirmative for at least four of us.
Right, but if three, you know, for 1.5.5, if three said yes, then where are you?
Yeah. Yes, I don't know that that's ever been litigated.
And I haven't asked. Well, I haven't asked someone who could
Yeah.
give us an answer that would make.
Are we at a point, we're just sort of, we're starting to ramble here. Are we at a point
Starting?
where the board wants more information before we,
Well, I'd like some
Closing.
information that says we'll build the sign differently. But,
Yeah,
if that's not gonna happen, then no.
I think I'm leaning toward being happy replacing in the existing spot myself at this point. I think those site triangles as is in our bylaw would be useful to see on a plan before we formally close. That's my opinion.
Yeah, then the plan ought to show the whole story about the sign in this way, and that way, and the site triangles.
At the very least, to just indicate what would actually be the situation with that in a recorded plan would be useful.
say that again?
Basically, I think seeing the site triangles on the plan would be useful to have in the record for this. Whether, even if I was to still ultimately vote yes, even if the site triangles look bad because they're going, depending on where they're measured from, I still think it'd be good to have them there on the actual plan as part of our records.
So you're suggesting that a revised plan be submitted showing the site triangle as defined by the ZBL?
Yes, at the least.
Maybe an additional plan, cause I don't need all of this.
Oh.
I need that.
Yeah.
I wanna see in detail, better detail, the new sign, where it goes, how big it is, what its site triangles are.
That could just be like a focus area of the sign.
So,
Is the rendering to scale, the one that's in the
The
packet?
rendering is to scale, yes.
Yeah, but I want drawing also, engineer.
so,
Hopefully, Fiona understands what kind of plan, renderings are good. Probably want those, but a plan, like we get with signs.
so it sounds like we are looking for some additional information, just sort of to, in writing, if nothing else, kind of in writing, confirm or clarify some of what we've been talking about. But other than that, the board I don't hear the board asking for a different design. Yeah, which is not to say that at some point in the future, you might not be think about some different signage to further improve the situation, but right now you're only looking to replace the existing sign. So what you do in the future for the purpose of your business, that's a whole nother. So I don't hear the board asking for any alternative designs at this point, just for information to make it more clear what this request is for. Sienna?
Yeah, so I would just also, through you, Mr. Chair, recommend the ability to change the colors on the sign, so that, because it needs to be two. The sight lines, as discussed, as they align with ASHTO regulations. And yeah, those are kind of the main things. I just want to
The
make sure
color
that
thing,
that's, everything's
to-
captured next
right,
time.
To confirm that the sign can be operated in compliance with the zoning bylaw. That is,
Yeah, I got it.
the board would like to be assured that to use the display on the sign, you're not required to put, high definition full motion video on there. That's not the only way the sign works.
Right, it's
As
not.
long as confirm that the sign can be operated in compliance with the bylaw.
Okay.
Because the decision is going to remind you that the zoning bylaw says
Yes.
that that's the way it is.
And again, not to belabor the point too much, but it's colors, two colors, one foreground, one background. There are rules about how frequently the sign can change the message and when the sign changes this message, how quickly the change has to happen. These have to do with distraction for drivers. We worked that out several years ago.
Do we have something about offering to put up messages, town messages?
Yes, we do.
An optional, if I remember.
Very,
correctly.
We have this wonderful Bible.
right.
Oh, you do you?
Variable,
Yeah, I think you would really like to,
Okay,
basically,
into it.
signs are generally limited to, delivering messages related to the business.
right,
Except that a variable message sign is allowed to put out to display public service messages from time to time.
okay,
But again, this is all about how the sign is operated, not about not about how it's built.
okay.
You might see some of that almost right across the street at, Gaudette.
Got it.
Yeah, from time to time.
Not to mention the
Oh,
town's
okay.
east sign
Anyway.
down at the triangle. I know, the board's not asking, but you're aware that I'd be happier with,
You got it.
and, you
All right.
you could go down that road
Right.
and depending on how many votes.
So, Fiona, you can work with the applicant here to make sure that the documentation the board is requesting is available for
Yes, the next.
our next meeting, and as we typically do, given the direction of the discussion here, Fiona may be able to begin drafting a decision,
Okay,
but we would, because we do not yet have everything in writing in terms of the materials, our procedure we would ordinarily want to keep the hearing open until such time as the additional information is provided to the board. And ideally, under the circumstances, our next meeting is 2 weeks from tonight.
Okay.
And provided that, if we get all that information and Fiona can complete a draft decision, we can close the hearing and vote on a decision
okay,
right after that.
Yeah, that's the last meeting before the election.
Yes.
And that changes who can vote, or it might change who can vote.
Yeah,
Maybe.
maybe.
I haven't seen any stickers.
We don't.
You haven't seen these stickers? Oh, you just gotta write the name in.
So, somebody told me that the voting machines, the machines don't like stickers.
No, they don't. They peel up. People
So-
put them down. They peel
So we'll need a
But
actual
then you
request
hand out
from you, the
name,
applicant, to
I
continue
think
the
it's
hearing
address
until that
too,
date.
isn't it?
And that can,
the name.
that can come in
thought it was addressed.
email, like right after this if you want, or if Fiona has a
Never
I don't
did
know
it.
if she does.
I never did it either.
But
And you understand what Bob's talking about a dimensional drawing?
nope, but
So
I'll
the
figure it
design,
out.
it's the design of the sign, it's 10, it shows that it's 10 feet, it's 6 feet,
Yeah.
it's 12 inches
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
deep, it's the size of the base and all of that.
And a
That's what,
space under, I don't know.
that, the space underneath the sign.
Oh, no, she's gotta be here.
Oh, did I not provide that? Or is what I not provided good enough? I did have a drawing that shows all of that, right?
That's what I tried to say about 4 times.
Yeah, that's what he's looking.
Okay, so the drawing, okay.
All right, so I'm assuming that you are requesting a continuation of the hearing. That's normally, the applicant normally requests the continuation of the hearing, so.
Yes,
I-
A.B. Murray requesting a continuance of the meeting.
And we usually have a piece of paper.
Greg, the continuance is over there.
Is there a continuance request?
I don't
there?
have any. Oh,
You
thanks.
run out and grab it while the board does their vote. I'll be right back.
So,
okay. I move that the board grant the applicant's forthcoming written request to continue this hearing until Monday, May 19th at 7:30 PM.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Mr. Wood,
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger,
aye.
Mr. Delamole,
Aye.
Mr. Veckatraman,
Aye.
and Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. Again, you may work with Fiona to make sure that you're providing everything that the board is asking for,
Okay,
and then we'll hopefully we'll wrap this all up in 2 weeks.
okay, terrific, thank you very much.
We
Should I
love
wait for her to come
Yeah.
back with that?
Yeah, Fiona's bringing
Okay.
bringing back the paperwork you need to sign to officially request the continuance.
Okay,
And that's just saying, so you don't
I
both
just
need to
noticed-
wait, you know, just,
On a lot of things I do, a third of us say aye and the rest say yes. That's the first time I remember
okay, so you don't
5
need this
aye
now.
votes.
I can just send this to you, or you need this right now?
Aye,
Sign it
aye.
now.
It's easier to do it now,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
whatever you.
I move it there.
Like, it's not this.
I can write 'em.
What was that?
yes, we did vote.
Yeah, well, that's at least part of it.
Moved, and I forget who seconded, but it's,
What case was doesn't show.
All right.
No, it's in here. It's in the packet. It was in the sign. It's called sign specifications.
Oh,
So it's a separate attachment.
well,
I always get that.
if they can point that out, well, but we don't have the triangles and whatnot, do we?
Yeah, no, I think the triangles are still missing, but this is.
Well,
here.
the
So
whole,
does
the
this-
whole plan,
Okay.
the plan, what do we call it, plan view?
All right,
Okay.
that's done. Are there any other items which may lawfully come before the board? I suspect not. And
I move we adjourn.
Second.
moved and seconded that this meeting be adjourned. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
Very much.
thank you.